welcome to episode 9 of Free to Speak. I'm Bobby and this is Paul.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following us. We appreciate it.
Yep, we appreciate everybody that's continued to stay with us. We kind of peaked a couple weeks ago, Paul, but we kind of dropped down a little bit. I don't know why, but we were starting to build our audience a little bit. And then we kind of dropped down a little bit over the last couple of videos. As I say every week, we've had some interesting conversations. We've talked about wokeness, we've talked about gender. Before we get started, Paul, I wanted to read an article, or at least talk about an article that I saw in American news recently. Are we putting too much emphasis on the dangers of the malpractice of wokeness, or is it something we should be concerned about?
Well, we're in an era where wokeness has come of age, and not just come of age, but it has, it has become way too malpractice that we can't just stand and ignore.
Right.
It's in our faces, so we need to respond.
It's in our faces, but not only that, it's leading to injustices and inequalities. And if you stand against those injustices, you will be the ones who will be punished. And I wanted to give an example of this, Paul, to show that this is not just something we're making up. This is real. This is a news story. Actually, in the state of West Virginia. West Virginia passed a law called the Save Women Sports Act. And basically what this law does, it's a state law that prohibits transgender girls from competing against biological girls in sports. However, a court, I think it was the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, in a 2-1 ruling, overthrew that law. And there was actually a track and field competition in which a biological male finished in first place in the shot put and second place in the discus event. This then caused 5 middle school girls. Okay, so here's the thing. The adults don't have the courage to stand up against this. It's the girls who are having the courage to stand up and protest. So they protested, and the way that they protested was they stepped into the shot put circle, and then they stepped out without a throw, resulting in a foul, and then, I guess, a forfeit. Basically what happened. It was their way of protesting. But as a result of that, the 5 girls were prohibited from participating in the next full day event. So they were the ones who were actually punished because they stood up and said, this is wrong, we're going to protest this.
So what was the argument for punishing them?
You know, it doesn't really say in the article, but they're transphobic, they're being bigoted, they're being intolerant. I would imagine the same kind of woke arguments.
Okay.
Yeah, I would imagine. The article doesn't say that I read of what the arguments were.
Yeah, before we move away from that topic, because I know we have a different topic for the day.
Yeah.
Well, this week I saw it's a meme, and it was showing lesbians looking for, on a lesbian dating site, and they're looking for partners. Then there comes a trans woman, and then this woman like, what? This is not what I ordered for.
No,
So I don't know if those women who reject trans women when they're lesbians, I don't know if they're also, or in a way, they're being segregated.
What? So there's a lesbian dating site.
Yeah.
And so you have biological males who identify as women who are going on these sites and saying, I'm a woman, blah, 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 blah. And then when you actually meet, then you find out, the woman actually finds out that this is actually a man.
A trans woman.
Which is a man who identifies as a woman who is a trans woman. I don't know. That's interesting.
It's just woke culture, getting us more confused.
Getting us more confused.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, for those, and I want to say probably for some of our African audience, this is what you have to look forward to if you allow your culture to be transformed by these values, by the activists who would push these values. Because what they will do is they will change your society. They will not respect your traditions and culture, because if you speak up and protest, you will be the one who is punished. They're even willing to punish girls. The adults don't have the courage to stand up. In this example I just gave, the adults don't have the courage to stand up, but it's the children who are standing up because they're the victims of it. But then they're also the ones who are punished by it.
Yeah, our parliament stood up against the trans movement, and recently, I think it has been news this past week, that are Speaker of Parliament and a few members of Parliament have been banned from travel to the UK. And interestingly, our leading opposition candidate has also been in the same hot water before, until he actually kind of became sympathetic to the trans. Then they let him go to the UK.
Right.
So in a way, the punishments are already here. Until you either bend to their will, or you can you have to suffer the consequence.
Right.
But it's also funny in itself that I wouldn't mind if you ban me from going to the UK. I can stay in Uganda. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, again, we have a new topic we want to talk about today, Paul, but I wanted to bring this story up to kind of show that the things, for those that are watching our videos and think that maybe we're just beating on a dead horse because we keep talking about wokeness and we keep talking about the dangers of the malpractice of wokeness, I want to give real examples to remind people that this is not something insignificant. There are real consequences to embracing these ideological agendas. There are real negative consequences, and real people are being impacted in very real negative ways. So.
Yeah, wokeness is, like I said earlier, wokeness is in our faces. On social media, for example, on X, I'll allude to Ugandan social media. The easiest way for a girl to become popular on social media and get likes and follows is to send salacious pictures of themselves. When you're twerking, when they're having sex, and you're posting this kind of videos, and apparently they're leaking their own videos so that they gain fame. And you know, ideally, because of woke culture, you can't come out and rebuke them because it's their freedom of I don't know.
Because you're shaming them.
Yeah, so
they would say that you're
shaming them, you're slut shaming them.
Slut shaming is a word I've heard.
Yeah, all those kind of shamings. So in a way, woke culture is coming in to defend immorality and defend this permissive culture. So in a way, woke culture is in our face. The only thing you can do is, you know, support them and make them feel like they're the heroes. It's just insane.
All right. So, Paul, we have a few comments. There was one comment, we got this one a couple of weeks ago, Paul, but I didn't respond to it until now, but I think it might be a good idea to address. It was a comment that was kind of directed at me. One thing is, Bobby needs to stop reacting with shock, voice, and expression when he discusses, because after a time, it's unsurprising and not shocking. So yeah, Paul, I think I do get a little intense and animated sometimes, but it's just my personality. I'm a person that's very expressive, and I bring all of my emotions into everything I do. So when I get really into a conversation, I can get really intense, and my facial features get all into it and so forth. But
it's part of the aspects of communication.
Yeah.
For when it comes to effective communication, ideally we have nonverbal cues that move along with the verbal cues. So while I speak, how I express myself, you can't just focus on what I'm saying, but you kind of have to look at me and see the actions that come along with what I'm saying. In a way, that's the way to drive the message home. I
think it would be maybe not as interesting, or maybe a little bit more boring if I didn't bring, myself into it. So.
You don't want to have two gloomy people just talking facts.
But I think you kind of balance me out a little bit, because you don't really have a lot of that strong animation.
Yeah, I'm more composed and it's just difference in personality maybe, or difference with the way we were raised, socialized.
Yeah.
And it turned out this way, it turned out that way, but that's complementary.
So we kind of balance each other out. So you're going to continue to see more of this dynamic, but we just kind of wanted to address it and say that we know it's something that I do, and hopefully people like it.
They don't have to like it. They don't have to mind it. That's all.
Yeah. Somebody wrote, "What of soldiers?" And actually, I need to clarify this one. This comment came as a result of our last 2 weeks of discussing males and suicides.
They're overwhelmed by life circumstances. There are reasons like they have a mental illness, like depression, or they have anxiety.
Those kind of reasons.
They're sick. They're intoxicated.
Right. So what we talked about was suicide within that context. But then somebody came along and said, "What of soldiers?" This is the comment that we received. "What of soldiers? Do you consider VIP bodyguards suicidal, since they are ever ready to jump into fire meant for another. And this was one of two comments that we received. We had another comment from somebody who asked about martyrs. Is martyrdom suicide? You know, for example, if you are being persecuted for your political views or your religious views, and you choose to go against the state that's persecuting you, knowing that you're going to die or suffer because of it, let's say you die because of it, are you committing suicide because you could have avoided the death if you had avoided the martyrdom? So we're not defining martyrdom or people who sacrifice themselves to save other people as being suicidal. That is not suicide. In the same way that killing somebody to protect yourself in self-defense or to protect somebody else is not murder.
Suicide is a process. Suicide is contemplated. It's a planned thing, and it doesn't just come out of the blue. Someone doesn't just commit suicide. They'll have to contemplate it, and they'll have to plan it out and as well execute it. And usually, like we get the reasons why people commit suicide earlier, the idea is someone is overwhelmed. Someone feels like there is no solution. There's no way out for them in life, or they've lost meaning for life, and they feel like ending their life is what would give them more meaning, or is what would save them from the horror of the life that they are living. So if someone is a bodyguard and they throw themselves in, to save their boss, they're not trying to save themselves from their own life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it defeats the purpose of suicide, because suicide is for you. You feel like you can't live with the kind of life that you're faced with, so you want to just get yourself rid of that kind of life. But then this other martyrdom or bodyguard kind of death is not suicide in a way that this person is not trying to save themselves from this life, rather they're having a bigger cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so those are the only two comments, Paul, that I had. I mean, we didn't get a lot of comments this time. I think a couple of weeks ago we were getting a lot of comments, and the comments kind of peaked and they've kind of dropped off a little bit. But
it's just encouraging to know that some you guys are out there appreciating what we're doing, and there are other people who have found me on different platforms just to appreciate what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's good. That's the fuel that keeps us going. The idea is that we are communicating to a few of you, even if it's just 10 of you that appreciate what we're doing. Yeah. That's a good thing. That's a good number. Well, we could do better with more, but whoever appreciates us, that's the fuel that we use.
Yeah. We're posting them on YouTube, TikTok, and Odyssey. We get few comments from these various platforms. Yeah. And we try to read the comments wherever we get them from. We have a couple of these videos have gone on Facebook, so we've gotten some comments from there. But so yeah, I think we've kind of wrapped up the topic of suicide, don't you think, Paul?
Yeah, I feel well, while we cannot succinctly talk about suicide, but we've done the best that we could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we're looking back at all the topics that we said that we would talk about in our first video, because you remember, Paul, the first week we gave a list of potential topics and the things that we wanted to talk about. There's only a couple of topics on that list that we haven't addressed yet. One of those topics, abortion. So today we're going to talk about abortion. The topic of abortion probably makes me a little bit more uncomfortable than other topics, because it's a topic that is so divisive in the United States, that splits people down the middle. And I know that the United States generally overall, there's the whole culture war thing going on, and America is a very divided society anyways. But abortion tends to be more divisive of an issue, to the point that's harder to pinpoint as being a conservative or a liberal issue, although the stereotype is that being pro-life is more conservative, and being pro-choice is more liberal in America. But it doesn't really follow that line so simply, because there are many conservatives who are pro-choice and there are many liberals who are pro-life. And it tends to be a very divisive issue, even within the camps that you're a part of. Whether you're part of the conservative camp or the liberal camp, it can be divisive even within those camps. And I think the thing is, it has to do with the fact that there's a different way of viewing what a fetus is. And it's something that's kind of frustrated me as somebody who is pro-life. And we get into these terminologies of pro-life and pro-choice. I don't know if I necessarily like those terms either, but it's the terms that the two camps choose to use. Oftentimes people in the pro-choice camp, they say that a woman has a right to do what she wants to do with her own body. And there was a time in my life when I also was pro-choice, because I subscribed to this attitude that a fetus was nothing more than a mass of tissue, that it wasn't a separate human life. But when you actually look at the evidence, which is actually what happened one day when I got into a debate with a pro-life person, and a pro-life person actually showed me what a fetus was and gave me the evidence, that the scientific evidence, that an unborn baby was just that, an unborn baby. It's not a mass of tissue. It's not simply a mass of tissue. It's a human life. But when you oftentimes try to debate a pro-choice person about this, they will not accept the idea that this is a human being, that they're killing a human being, and they won't even dialogue with you on that level. And this is why the whole thing is so frustrating for me. Woke people won't even debate you, but pro-choice people will debate you, but they'll never acknowledge your arguments or your evidence that an unborn baby is a human life. At least almost never. I've had a couple of exceptions where I was in a debate with somebody who acknowledged that a fetus is a human life, but this is kind of it's a justifiable reason to kill a baby, which wasn't a very strong argument. But
it's a divisive topic, and as well in Uganda, abortion happens pretty more frequent than you would assume. For example, I've seen kids as young as 13, 14 going to those hospitals or clinics to abort, and the figures go higher with those university students and high schoolers, because they are more sexually active than you can imagine. So the idea is, how justifiable is it to kill another life? The life that you're extinguishing, or the life that you're exterminating. What justification do you have to exterminate that life, without compromising its own autonomy?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're exterminating someone's life without their opinion, without their choice. Much as they're still kids, they can't say nothing. They don't speak. They don't even hear yet. But then you are compromising their own autonomy. It's the same way you could kill a kid who is 1 day old. They can't say anything about it. They cannot debate with you. So you could still take them out. For me, I would still look at it like, even if the child is 3 months old, the mere fact that you can watch in the scan and this child is moving,
or it's the pregnancy, the child inside the womb is 3 months.
Yeah, the pregnancy, 3 months.
Yeah.
There's still action to show that this is a live being, and you're compromising that life because of your own decisions. Mm-hmm. Now, I might understand why sometimes abortion may be justifiable. For example, if the life of the mother is at risk, and there's no way the medics could save both lives. Now that mm-hmm. one maybe I could understand. Or for example, when a child is so young and their body has not matured well enough to actually sustain a pregnancy or give birth, and a few other cases. But objectively, out of those cases, there are abortions which are not justifiable biologically, but then they're justifiable on emotional terms. Now, those kind of abortions, I don't agree with them. They're inhumane, in a way that we are denying personal responsibility in the first place. Why are you getting pregnant when you're not ready to have a child? In abortion, who has the say about the abortion? Is it the man or the female? Of course, the females have the say because it's her body, apparently. But then, if I want her to abort and she refuses to abort, I'll still have to take care of her because I made her pregnant. That means I'm only having responsibility when she keeps the baby. That's when I have a say. That's when I have to pay. But not
at the stage of abortion.
Yeah, but instead of abortion, then it's about her. That's just a weird way of looking at things.
Here's the problem with that. That argument only works if a baby is a part of a woman's body, but it is not. The womb is a part of a woman's body, but the baby is not. That baby has its own DNA. It is a separate human life. It is not part of a woman's body. It is inside of a woman's body. It is sharing the space within a woman's body, within a woman's womb, or it is occupying that space. It is living in that space, but it is not a part of a woman's body. It is a separate human life that has its own DNA. And even when you look at the word fetus, where does the word fetus come from? It's derived from the Latin, and the word means offspring. So it doesn't mean blob of tissue. Even the word fetus tells you that it's a separate human life. It's offspring. That's what fetus means.
Yeah, so you have a separate human life living in your body, and you are compromising its will or its autonomy because of your emotional choices or your erratic decision making. I was getting to the point of asking why you would get pregnant when you don't want to get pregnant. With all the plethora of options of contraceptives that are out there, why would you get pregnant when you're not ready for it? The mere fact that you engage in coitus, we know that ideally you can get pregnant. And if you do get pregnant, then you want to stand up and be counted. You face the consequences. But then what we're encouraging people is that, oh, you can go around, sleep around with everyone you want, but you won't be held accountable for what happens after. After all, you can just eject the baby. And without, before even we go to the complications that happen with abortion, because there are psychological factors,
which they don't want to acknowledge.
Social complications, there are biological complications, there are all those kind of complications that come. We want to ignore all those for now and just talk about the autonomy of that being inside the body. Are they a separate human being, or it's just you?
Yeah.
If it was just you, why do you have to birth them and push them out when, at one point in life? That means from the beginning it was a different being that you were carrying. It was not your own. It was not you. Yes, it carries some part of your DNA, but so does it carry the part of DNA of another person. But then we grooming people to be selfish and just think about their own feelings and enjoy moments, but then don't have repercussions.
Right.
We can't live in the world where we are ridding ourselves of repercussions of our actions, because with action there are always consequences. So you want to subscribe to an action or to let an action happen when you are so aware about what could happen after that.
Yeah.
We can't rid ourselves of consequences every time.
So they want the benefits of sex, but not the responsibilities that come from the consequences of sex.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And it's pernicious to the young generation that we are giving them all this kind of pro-choice, apparently pro-choice. I don't use those terms much, but since Bobby introduced them, yes, the pro-choice kind of a narrative or ideologies, we're promoting them to the children, and then we're promoting more promiscuity, because sexual contact isn't just about having fun, because it comes about psychological consequences, emotional and social factors come along the way. So this child is sleeping around with different people, or this woman is sleeping around with different people without an intention of staying with them, but then they are bonding with them emotionally. It will always have an emotional toll that will be carried forward. You then just stop, oh, we had sex, it was fun, and you move on. We have many in our offices as therapists, and they have traumatic reactions to sexual contact, traumatic reactions to the abortion itself, PTSD, depression, anxiety issues because of the abortion. But then when we are pro-choicing them, we claim that we are giving them we are giving them an education prior to that, but we always give them a biased education so that they still abort anyway. And that's a pernicious way of supporting people who are vulnerable, because when a woman is pregnant, she's vulnerable, and you're manipulating that vulnerability to just have a narrative.